She stood tied to a weather-worn fence post behind the saloon, arms raised above her head like some rusted-out scarecrow. Barefoot, mud swallowed her ankles, and a ragged muslin dress clung to her like wet paper. Her wrists were raw, blistered from the rope cutting in each time she twitched. She was maybe 12, maybe younger, thin as a fence rail and quieter than the wind. Nobody knew her name. Nobody asked. The crowd around her laughed, spat, gambled. Most weren't bidding on her. They were there for the card games, the girls upstairs, the whiskey. But a child tied up in plain sight drew all kinds, some curious, some angry, and the worst kind, interested. One such man leaned against a broken hitching post, chewing on jerky, squinting through the dust. "Gambler's kid," he muttered. "Owes every man in town. Using her to pay what he can't cover at the table." He didn't sound surprised. No one did. Then the wind shifted. Through the trail, dust came a rider, tall in the saddle, worn hat, frayed coat, and eyes that didn't blink too much. Jesse James, 40 years old. A man with no sons, no daughters, and a ranch he couldn't keep together without breaking himself. In half every morning. Jesse wasn't headed into town, just dropping off tools for sharpening, maybe picking up a few supplies. But when he passed the alley and caught a glimpse of her, sunken cheeks, arms trembling from just standing upright, his horse stopped before he told it to. He stayed there a moment, jaw tight, reins slack, watching, listening. A loud voice cracked through the air. $12 for the girl, 1 week's labor or permanent. Your pick. She's small, but she don't eat much. The girl didn't lift her head. The gambler, thin, sour-smelling, missing half a smile, sauntered over and gave the rope. A tug like she was livestock. She can clean, wash, cook a little. Stronger than she looks. Dumb as dirt, though. Won't talk back. No one moved. The crowd peeled away, bored or ashamed. Too ugly a scene, even for this town. Jesse dismounted. He didn't look at the gambler, didn't speak, just reached into his coat and pulled out a cloth bundle. Coins clinked. The gambler narrowed his eyes. 15, he said. Jesse nodded once. You want her for the week? No. Permanent. You buying her? No, just settling your debt. The gambler chuckled. Same difference. He tossed the rope onto the ground like, it was nothing. She's yours. Jesse didn't speak. Walked over, knelt, cut the girl loose with his pocket knife. Her arms dropped too fast and she staggered. He caught her, not rough, not gentle. She looked up, startled, then quickly away. No tears. Just wide, hollow eyes that had stopped expecting kindness. They rode out under a sky going gray. She didn't sit behind him. Jesse let her ride the mule alone, reins tied to his horse. She clung to the saddle horn, fingers white-knuckled, face turned from the road. Dust rose behind them like ghosts not ready to stop whispering. Jesse's ranch sat 10 miles west, nestled between rocky bluffs and bare cottonwoods. The barn sagged. From the last storm, the roof still leaking from the one before. Chickens wandered. A fence post lay crooked by the gate. Jessie hadn't had time to fix it. She took it all in, quiet. Inside, the house was small and spare. A pot of beans simmered on the stove. A wool blanket sat folded on the cot near the EO. Fireplace. Yours, he said. She stood still. You hungry? She nodded. He ladled beans into a dented tin bowl and set it down. She sat, but didn't touch the spoon. Just stared like it might be a trick. You don't got to eat it fast, he said softer. She picked up the spoon, slow not to spill. When she tasted it, her face twitched. Not from heat, from flavor, warm food. Sitting down, she didn't finish, just said, "Thank you," like the words came from under the floorboards. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer stories, just lit a lamp, checked the fire and said, "I don't lock doors. You're safe here." She nodded but didn't move. He stepped out to unhitch the mule. Night fell fast. Wind hissed through the canyon. Coyotes cried from the ridge. Jesse looked at the stars and wondered what the hell he'd just brought home. When he came back in, she was asleep, curled tight on the cot like she was still tied to something. At midnight, a floorboard creaked. Jesse sat up, hand on his rifle. The girl stood there, eyes glassy. "Don't lock me in the barn," she whispered. "I won't. I've been locked before." "I figured." She went back to the cot. Didn't sleep. Neither did he. Morning brought frost on the window. Sun rose blood orange behind the ridge, shadows long across the kitchen floor. Jesse poured water into the kettle. His hand trembled. Cold, he told himself. Outside, a hawk circled. Inside, the girl still lay there, eyes open. Jesse didn't know her story. Didn't need to. He'd seen men do worse with less reason. The first thing she asked wasn't food or a name. It was not to be locked away. Maybe that was enough. She woke with the sun. Jesse hadn't told her to. No bell, no shout. Just a rhythm beaten into her by punishment if she guessed wrong. The quilt had slipped off her, but she hadn't moved, like she didn't trust warmth to stay. Jesse was outside, splitting kindling. His coat slipped off one shoulder. Each strike of the axe echoed like a warning to winter. She stood at the porch, unsure if she should ask permission or just step forward. She chose neither. He noticed, jerked his chin toward the chicken coop. "Chickens need feedin'. Corn's in the sack." She went barefoot, toes disappearing into frostbitten grass. By the time he finished stacking wood, she was back, hands red, straw clinging to her skirt. She didn't complain, just sat on. The steps, knees to her chest, eyes on the road like someone might come claim her. They didn't speak until breakfast. Jesse baked once a week, though his bread came out hard as shingles. This time it was warm, golden crust. The smell filled the house like prayer. He set a piece on her plate, beside a spoonful of honey. Watched without watching. She didn't move. "You can eat it." She looked at him. "All of it?" "Course. That's what it's there for." Her hands hovered like touching it wrong might make it vanish. She tore a piece off, held it to her lips, stopped. "Should I save some for later?" "There'll be more later." She stared, not quite believing. He didn't press, just got up, poured coffee, and stared out the window like the land might answer something aching inside him. After breakfast, she swept the floor 3 times, scrubbed the stove till it shined, folded her blanket twice more before dusk. Jesse tried to tell her she didn't have to, but every time he spoke, her eyes flinched like she braced for a belt that never came. "She don't know what to do with warm bread," he muttered, or silence. Over the next week, they found a rhythm. Not comfort, but habit. She followed him on fence checks, kept pace as best she could. When she tripped and skinned her knee, she gritted her teeth. He handed her a cloth. "Ain't ashamed to hurt." She nodded, wiped the blood, said nothing. One evening, he found her under the wheelbarrow by the barn, not sleeping, hiding. "What are you doing?" "Just checking." "For what?" "If the door locks from the outside." He crouched beside her. "It don't. Nothing here does." She didn't answer, but the next night she slept closer to the fire. Weeks passed. Neighbors started to ask. "Who's the girl?" Hank Sutter asked at the well. "None of your concern," Jesse said. "Not saying it is. Just strange." "Strange don't mean wrong." By the 3rd week, she started humming. Barely, off-key. Only when she thought he couldn't hear. Jesse pretended not to notice. She never asked about his wife. The grave behind the barn had no marker, just a stone with soft edges. One morning, she left a flower there, a single Danesian crushed by the season, placed gently. Later, he asked, "You miss someone?" She didn't answer. But that night, she whispered, "I had a brother. Had." Spring clawed its way in. Snow melted off the ridge. Birds returned. One morning she found a robin's egg, cracked open in the grass. She picked it up, brought it inside like it was made of glass. Jessie watched from the porch and thought, she's been broken too. But she still holds things gentle. The first time she laughed was by accident. Jessie burned the cornbread black as coal. He muttered under his breath that the loaf had died in vain. She tried to keep a straight face, but the snort escaped before she could bury it. Then she froze, hand clapped over her mouth. Jessie didn't laugh, but he smiled. "'Bout time," he said. "Thought maybe you'd forgot how." She ducked her head, still grinning behind her palm. They had only one visitor that month, a trap-pressing tinker who'd once played cards with Jessie in better days. He noticed the girl right away. "Hired help?" he asked. "No," Jessie said simply. The man grunted. "Not your kin either." Jessie turned to her. "Go on inside, would you?" She obeyed. When the man looked back, Jessie's voice turned iron. "You don't ask about her again. She ain't my business." "Exactly." That night she sat at the table longer than usual. Finally she asked, "Will you sell me back?" Jessie blinked. "What?" "Men buy girls, then sell them again. That's how it works." He set his coffee down. "That ain't what happened." She tilted her head. "Then what was it?" He searched for the right words, took his time finding them. "I think I saw someone drowning. And maybe I was too. So I pulled you out. And you." He paused. "You pulled me too." She didn't answer, but she didn't ask again. On the 12th night, she handed him a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" he asked. "My name." "You already told me. Not the real one." He unfolded the paper. 4 letters, shaky and small, but written like a promise. Lena. Jessie didn't speak for a long time. Then he nodded. "All. Right then, Lena." She beamed like she'd just been given permission to exist. The next morning, Lena brought in kindling, poured coffee, and set 2 plates without being told. When Jessie sat down, he found a slice of warm bread on his plate. Not from him, from her. She watched him take the first bite. He chewed slowly, looked up, raised an eyebrow. "Little dry." She grinned. "You didn't complain about mine." He laughed, for the first time since his wife passed. Outside, birdsong drifted on the wind through the hills. Inside, the fire burned steady. And for the first time in years, Jesse James didn't eat breakfast alone, not in his belly, and not in his bones. The wind turned mean the morning they came. Jesse knew something was wrong before the dust even rose on the road. Birds went quiet. The air got that tight, waiting feel, like the land itself was holding breath. He was chopping wood when the dog growled, low and steady, ears pinned back. Jesse stood straight, wiped his palms on his trousers, and looked east. 3 riders, moving slow. The kind of slow that meant they didn't need to hurry, because they expected everyone else to. Lena was inside, washing beans. She hadn't seen them yet. Jesse didn't call her. The men dismounted before reaching the gate. The first wore a preacher's collar, stiff and clean despite the ride. His eyes held no kindness. The second was a lawman, badge crooked, mustache trimmed too neat. And the third, Jesse didn't need a name. The eyes were enough. Sharp, cold, narrow. The gambler's smirk, same jawline too. "Morning, Jesse," he said. Jesse's voice stayed even. "What brings you?" The preacher stepped forward. "Mr. Boone, that's right. I'm Reverend Hatch. This here's Deputy Slater, and that man's Mr. Caleb Dawes." Jesse nodded once, slow. "What brings you, Caleb?" Caleb spat in the dirt. "My brother sold you something he had no right to." "He sold me a lie. Girl was chained to a post behind the saloon. I gave him coin to cut her free. Deputy Slater cleared his throat. That coin didn't absolve anything. Legally, she's property. Settled through a wager. There's paperwork. She ain't a mule, Jesse said. She's a child. Reverend Hatch folded his hands like in prayer, but his voice came sharp. We're not here to argue philosophy. You're harboring stolen property under your roof. Unless you can produce proof of guardianship, the child will be returned. Jesse felt something cold flicker behind his ribs. Not rage, not yet, just certainty. These men had come with their minds made up. She's safer here than anywhere else. She eats, sleeps, ain't chained, ain't afraid. That don't make it legal, the deputy said. Lena had stepped onto the porch without a sound. Hair braided, sleeves rolled, apron smudged with flour. She looked small in the doorway, but she held herself like stone. Caleb's eyes landed on her, curled into a smile that made Jesse's stomach turn. Lena, the preacher said smoothly. Come here now. We'll take you home. This man's done his part. She didn't move. Girl, Caleb growled. You belong to our family. You were promised. Jesse stepped between them. She ain't going. Deputy Slater's hand twitched near his hip. You sure you want to make this official, Boone? You really want to be on the record as obstructing the law? Jesse glanced back at Lena. Her eyes weren't scared now. They were hard. She didn't need saving anymore. You've got 7 days, Jesse said. Come back with papers, or don't come back at all. Reverend Hatch's jaw tightened. The Lord frowns upon stubbornness in the face of justice. Jesse didn't answer. The men mounted up. Dust swallowed them fast, but the tension didn't leave with their horses. They'll come back, won't they? Lena asked. Yes. Then we got 7 days. She turned and walked inside like she'd just added it to the list between feeding the hens and sweeping the porch. That night, Jesse couldn't sleep. He sat in the rocker near the fire, watching the flames jump, like nervous hearts. He thought of his wife, her gentleness, the quiet way she had healed things with tea and silence. Lena was nothing like her, and maybe that's what made this feel like something new, not a replacement, a reckoning. Lena stayed up too, reading from an old hymn book, mouthing the words but not singing. At one point she whispered, If they come back and take me, what'll you do? He didn't look at her. Depends how loud you scream. The week passed too fast. Jesse wired a letter to a lawyer in Junction Bluff, an old Army friend who owed him a favor, but law moved slow. Out here, slower than horses. He knew better than to hope for papers before the deadline. On the 4th day, he taught Lena how to hold a rifle. Not to shoot nobody, he said, just to feel the weight, to know you're not helpless. She nodded and cradled it like a newborn calf. Not fearfully, carefully. On the 5th, they rebuilt part of the fence together. Her hands blistered. She didn't complain. On the 6th, she asked to sleep outside. Just for one night, so I'll know what to do if I have to. Run again. Jesse laid out a blanket beside her under the stars. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The 7th morning came pale and windless, the kind of calm that only shows up before something breaks. A wagon creaked up the road just after sunrise. Not the law, not the preacher. A woman, skin darkened by sun, eyes sunken, voice rough as gravel. She stepped down slow, leaning on a carved cane. When she saw Lena, the cane dropped. Mama, Lena whispered. Jesse froze. The woman was no older than 30, but looked 60 from grief. She fell to her knees and clutched Lena so tight the girl gasped. I thought you was dead, the woman cried. I told them I'd come back. I told them not to hurt you. They sold me, Lena said softly. I know. Her mother choked. I came back, but they told me you'd gone. They lied. Jesse stepped away, unsure where he belonged. But Lena turned to him. "This is my mama." He nodded. "I figured." Her mother stood on shaky legs. "I got a shack near Cotton Bend. Nothing much, but it's ours. I came to bring her home." Jessie studied her, ragged dress, thin shoes, bruised arms. She looked like a ghost trying to remember how to live. Lena looked up at him, waiting. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Lena walked to her mother, took her hand, then turned to Jessie. "Will you come with us?" He blinked. "Just for a little. Help us get the place safe." His throat felt tight. "That's your home." She stepped forward, closed her small hand around his weathered one. "It's yours too," she said. The wagon rolled out by noon. 3 souls. 1 second chance. And somewhere on the trail behind them, the preacher's words scattered in the dust and meant nothing. Nothing but the sound of a girl calling a man family for the first time, an echo that would carry across the plains. They traveled slow, not because the mule was tired, but because trust takes time. And no one wanted to spook it. The road to Cotton Bend wound through scrubland where the trees grew low and gnarled, clinging to red dirt like they'd survived storms trying to yank them clean out. Lena rode in the back of the wagon, a blanket around her shoulders, her mother asleep beside her, mouth open from exhaustion. Jessie walked beside the mule, hand on the reins, boots dragging slightly in the dust. He hadn't meant to go this far. But when Lena asked, he couldn't say no. He never really could. Not since that night she whispered, "Don't lock me," in the barn. The shack appeared near sunset. Slanted roof leaning into a rock ridge, walls patched with tin and old timber. Smoke from a chimney curled up blue. A bent windmill creaked nearby, and the smell of pine sap hung thick in the air. "That it?" Jessie asked. Lena nodded. But her mother, Mara, stared ahead like she'd just remembered every bruise she ever took inside those walls. They reached the door. It groaned open. Inside, it was better than Jessie expected. Swept, dry. A small table, 1 cot, a few jars lined a shelf. And on the shelf, he saw a child's. A drawing tacked to the wall with a rusty nail, a woman, a girl, and what looked like a red house. The red had bled out with time, like a memory stretched too thin. "She kept this," Lena whispered. Her mother smiled weakly. "It was the only thing I could carry for a while." Jessie helped start the fire, gathering dry wood, lighting it with his flint, and feeding it gently until it crackled. He didn't speak much. He knew when silence was needed, and this house was full of it. That night, Lena cooked beans and flatbread. Her mother dozed, waking only to murmur that the bread smelled like home. Jessie slept outside. In the morning, the wind shifted. He smelled smoke, not cooking smoke, wildfire. He bolted upright and saw the ridge to the west glowing faintly orange, like an ember flickering before remembering it's a flame. He ran to the shack. Lena was already outside, barefoot, staring at the horizon. "It's moving," she said. Jessie scanned the trees. Wind's pulling it east. If it jumps the canyon, it'll be on us before dusk. Mara stumbled out behind them, coughing. "What do we do?" "We run," Jessie said. But Lena didn't move. She was staring at the tiny shed beside the shack. "Mama's things are in there. My books, her papers." Jessie glanced at the sky. "Not worth your life." Lena looked at her mother. "What if we don't get back?" Mara's face crumpled. Jessie made the choice for them. "I'll get it. You get the mule ready." Lena opened her mouth to protest, but he was already moving. The shed was padlocked with a bent nail. Jessie ripped it off with his knife and shoved the door open. Inside, a trunk, some old linens, a wrapped bundle of dried herbs. He grabbed what he could, stuffed them into his coat, and sprinted back as the first ash drifted down. By afternoon, the fire had crowned the ridge. Trees screamed as they burned. Smoke wrapped the valley like a closing fist. They rode out just in time. Behind them, the ridge burned red, angry, alive, consuming. Mara wept. Lena didn't. She watched it burn and said quietly, "It took everything again." Jesse looked at her. Not everything. They rode until they reached a creek where the water still ran clear and cold. They camped there, made coffee from the last of the grounds, and said little. That night, Lena sat beside Jesse, their backs against a rock still warm from the day. "I thought if we came here, maybe something would heal," she said. "It did," he answered. She turned. "How can you say that? The fire took it all." "Fire burns what's dead," Jesse said, "but it don't kill what's already living." Lena blinked slowly, like she was taking that in, word by word. "I kept thinking this place would fix things," she whispered. "That I'd see Mama in her home and something would feel right. But all I saw was what we lost," he nodded. "That don't mean it ain't worth remembering, but you don't got to live in it." She didn't answer, but when he stood to walk back toward the fire, she followed without hesitation. In the morning, they returned to the remains of the shack. The walls were blackened, one side caved in. But something caught Lena's eye near the stump out front. A book, slightly scorched but intact. She picked it up, dusted it off. Inside was her drawing, untouched. She held it to her chest and smiled for the first time in days. "Guess fire didn't win everything," she said. "No," Jesse said, "not even close." As they packed the mule again, Mara leaned on Jesse's arm a little longer than needed. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "No, but I'm glad I did." She studied him. "You ever think about making something permanent again?" He didn't answer right away. Lena looked between them, quiet, hopeful, the way only someone who'd known loss could be. Jesse placed the book in the saddlebag. "Let's get home first," he said. "Then we'll see what still wants to grow." They turned toward the road. Behind them, the ridge still smoldered. Ahead, the wind smelled like rain. By the time they made it back to the ranch, the fence was gone. Jesse stared at the smoldering post. Charred wood still hissed beneath the ash, like the ground itself was grieving. The wind carried a bitter scent of oil, scorched rope, and rage. This wasn't wildfire. It was human, measured, meant. Lena stepped down from the mule slowly. Her mother clutched the saddle, trembling. From the road, eyes wide with a dread she couldn't voice. But Lena, 12 years old, feet blistered, heart stitched from scraps, just stood there, not afraid, not surprised. Jesse walked the perimeter in silence, boot prints everywhere, at least 3 men. He could tell by the depth of the prints that one of them limped. Caleb Doss. They had waited, watched, and when no one was home, they made their move. Inside, the house was ransacked, furniture overturned. Jesse's wife's rocking chair hacked apart with a hatchet. The rifle, gone. His ledger, too. Scrawled on the door in charcoal was one word: thief. Mara covered her mouth. Lena stepped forward, fingers grazing the black letters. "They want us scared," she said. "That's all this is." Jesse looked at her, really looked. There was something in her now, something forged in the red glow of the ridge, something that wouldn't break again. The girl who once whispered, "Don't lock me in the barn," was gone. What stood in her place was steel. "We're not running again," she said. Jesse nodded. "No, we're not." They started fixing things. Mara gathered the chairs upright and swept glass into a bucket. Lena untied what was left of the hay bundles and spread them to dry. Jesse rebuilt the front step. By sunset, each nail drove down with purpose. That night, they slept in shifts. Jesse kept the shotgun across his lap. Mara leaned against the wall with a blade tucked in her sleeve. Lena didn't sleep. She just sat near the fire, watching the door like it might breathe. At dawn, someone knocked. Not heavy, just steady. Jesse answered with the shotgun raised. On the porch stood Hank Sutter. He didn't flinch. "Word's gotten round," Hank said. "Some men think you took what wasn't yours. Some others think you saved her life. I know which I'd be." Jesse lowered the gun. "I brought nails," Hank added, holding up a sack and planks. "We're going to need a few more hands if we're patching that fence." Behind him, 3 more neighbors waited. One held wire. Another had stew. Mara stepped forward, hesitant. Hank tipped his hat. "Ma'am?" Lena stayed on the porch, arms folded, watching, always watching. By noon, a dozen people were at work. Someone brought fresh water from the well. Someone else offered blankets. No one asked questions. They just built. Caleb Doss rode in near sundown. He didn't come with a badge or preacher, just himself, and that sour grin that had once made girls flinch. "Looks like you got a party," he said, dismounting slow. Jesse didn't reach for the shotgun. He walked toward him. Steady. Caleb spat. "You think this changes anything? She's still marked. Property, you got no papers." "She's not property," Jesse said. Caleb laughed. "You gonna marry her mama? Make it legal that way?" "You really want a burned-out widow and a feral brat for your trouble?" Lena stepped down from the porch. She didn't speak. She slapped Caleb across the face so hard the sound echoed through the hills. The men stopped working. No one spoke. Caleb's cheek burned red. "You don't get to talk about my mother," Lena said, voice quiet but deadly clear. "And I don't belong to you," Caleb sneered. "Little wildcat thinks she's grown." Jesse stepped beside her. "She's not wild, she's brave. That's more than I can say for a man who only shows up when the fire's out." Caleb's hand hovered near his belt, but too many men stood behind Jesse now, too many eyes watching. He didn't draw. He mounted his horse. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," Jesse said. "I won't." Caleb turned and rode off without looking back. When he was gone, Lena turned to Jesse, chest rising and falling fast. Her hands still shook. "I was scared," she admitted. "I know. But I didn't. Run." "No," he said. "You didn't." That night they ate together by the fire. The stew was warm, the bread soft. When Mara sang a lullaby from some long-ago memory, Lena rested her head on her shoulder without flinching. Jesse watched. Them. Something deep in his chest uncoiled. For the first time in years, he let himself lean back in the chair and close his eyes, just for a minute, without fearing what might come in the dark. Later, as the fire burned low, Lena looked up at him. "Do you think I'm still broken?" He didn't answer right away. He walked to the old cabinet, pulled out his wife's carving knife, and handed it to her. "It's not about being broken," he said. "It's about what you do after." She took it gently, the blade gleaming in the firelight. And then she smiled, not because she was fixed, but because she wasn't hiding anymore. In time, people forgot how she got there. They remembered her bread, her stories, her stubbornness. And when she rode into town years later with her own wagon, with her own name on the ledger, no one called her wild. They called her Boone, because names are earned. And fire. Fire only changes everything if something new is waiting in the ash. This story, it ain't just about rescue, it's about what comes after. And if you're lucky, like Jesse James was, the person you save might just save you.